part the same. The big consideration is to make sure you don't pull all the way up the wall. We want to leave a little bit of extra clay at the rim. So we're coning up and coning down. This is 1 3/4 pounds. Making sure that line is straight through so we can center nice and quick. Drop that right hand in. This time when we pull, we're not going to hook our fingers. We're just going to pull with flat fingers into the palm. Press. And then the first pull, just like last week, is nice and gentle. Keeping that rim thick. So that's the big difference. There's a colossal air bubble in this. Now we're doing that undercut. Pointer finger above the pressure on the outside to keep the clay from rolling up our hand. And pull. Let it flare a little bit. You can let it kind of angle out. Just think like wide planter. And then the last one. Pushing the clay out over the outside hand to scoop and grab. And now we can really let it flare. Alright. Soak all the water out. Just touch up one little spot that looks like it's still a little thick. And now we're going to use the metal rib or your preferred rib to round the inside. I like the metal rib because they don't need water and they give you a really smooth, clean finish. They take away all the slip. Before I forget. Before you open your bowl, cut the bottom. It gets really hard to get under there. So we're going to scoop that excess clay right up and out. Feel those walls. They should be nice and even all the way up, just like they were for the cylinders. Hold this so you're hiding your fingers behind the bend, thumb in the middle, and then check a wristwatch. Support underneath with your left hand so you can tilt to the left. And you're watching the outside of the bowl while the rib pushes in at like 1 o'clock. Slow and steady, right down into the bottom. Sit in that corner for a second, and then turn the rib and come across the middle. If you want more isolated pressure, you can turn the rib a little bit so that it's not so flat across your fingers, it's got a little angle. So we'll get in and push below the rim. Because we're not trying to flare the rim on this one, we're just trying to round the belly of the bowl. Now if you want to clean up the curve on the outside, I use the flat side of the rib, put a little bend in it, and then hold it away from the pot so you can make a little window between the pot and the rib. You don't want to hold it flat to the rib because the bend won't do anything. So make that little window and then gently press the clay out into the rib and roll that curve up with the pressure.
And what does that?
Smooths the outside and takes away all the slip.
Okay.
Now with bowls, we always want to push one last time from the inside just to make sure that interior form is nice and round. And that is a round bowl. So let's cut this off the wheel. And then do one that's flared, and then we'll talk about what happens in between those two. All right. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about round bowls? Okay. So the dream is that because we're only pulling a few times, because we're not spending a lot of time centering, the clay isn't going to absorb a lot of water, so it's going to stay pretty strong. So we can get away with some more adventurous shapes. Keep the rim thick. It'll thin out. Also, with a round bowl like that, they tend to hold their shape better if the rim has like a slight teardrop to it. They're less likely to chip if you drop a spoon into it. In general, I just like a little bit of swelling at the top of the pot. Cutting underneath, pinching to feel those nice even walls, and then pulling up. I'm leaning back so that I can keep my arms in and down. My shoulders are relaxed. We're not pulling like this. We're pulling like that. Soak that water out, make sure the bottom looks nice and clean. One more tiny test just to see. That feels pretty good. Okay. Wood knife. Cut the bottom, flip it over, clean it up. If anybody wants to see that in more detail after the demo, we can talk about how to practice that. Alright, same rib. Same grip, same idea, except instead of pushing out below the rim, we're going to start folding away at the rim and then chasing it down into the bowl. So we start up at the top, fold the rim out, and then surf down in it. Just like pulling, we don't do the whole thing all at once. So when we're flaring a bowl, we're not going to do the whole thing all at once. Flare it out. Surf down in it. Flare it out. Surf down. So if you look at the profile of this, you get nice and low. It's kind of got this little whack in there. You can get rid of that by supporting the rim when you go to flare. Popping that finger right there, and then when you go in for the rib, it'll keep that nice and straight. Every now and then, get rid of this junk. Otherwise it's going to build up and it's going to come off inside the bowl. Alright. At this point, your only real limitation is the rim, how much expansion the rim will tolerate, and how dry the clay is. So notice right here, it's starting to slump. That's a pretty good sign that the clay is getting tired. So I'll come in with the rib underneath and just pop it back up. That spot right before the foot ring is the most delicate part of the bowl, and it's gonna be the canary in the coal mine. If that starts to get a little squidgy, the bowl is not long for this world.
You're not putting water on it.
Oh yeah, light pressure with the metal rib, you don't need water. That way we're not saturating the pot so the clay doesn't get soft.
With the rubber ribs, do you need water?
The soft ones tend to need water, but if you can also just dip the rib in the water, as long as you're not like applying a lot to the pot. Now, I can't pick this up with the pan on, so we're just gonna pop the pan off, scoot it to the edge, and grab it the same way as we were last time. Pointer finger right above the floor, middle fingers underneath the floor. Now, the dream is that if we cut this in half, we won't see a lot of excess clay towards the bottom of the pot, which means we won't need to do a ton of trimming. So we got that floor that's twice as thick and the walls that are already finished. So when you go to trim it down the road, you can take a little bit excess off of here if you want to change the angle of your foot, but really all the trimming you're doing is across the bottom. This is really, really hard to get if you try to throw to the shape of your pot. So throw up and then lower it out or expand it out. So what I want you guys to do is throw a nice tall round one, and then a nice flared out one. And then if you feel like there's room in between, try to thread that needle.